Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time to come and join the Office of Human Rights and Equity to learn more about the LGBTQIA plus community, but particularly those who identify as transgender and gender non-binary. And so this is a virtual webinar entitled Pronouns and Policies, Combating LGBTQIA plus Discrimination in the Workplace. And I'm just so grateful to introduce you to our administrator, Yolanda F. Saunier, who will talk more about how we're going to be spending our time together. So thank you all so much for joining, and I look forward to a robust conversation. Yolanda?
Thank you, Claudia, and good afternoon to everyone that's joining us. As Claudia mentioned, I'm Yolanda Saunier. I am the administrator for the Office of Human Rights and Equity here in Howard County. My pronouns are she, hers, and hers. Before we get started, I wanted to start by wishing everyone a happy Pride Month. And then secondly, I just wanted to turn just very quickly to something that I know that's been on people's minds. And I don't want people to think, we've had this session planned and we don't want people to think that, our office is not also concerned to have it on our minds. Our office has talked, and the decision overturning Roe v. Wade is a huge upset in violation of the rights of individuals who can get pregnant to choose what they want to do with their bodies. I would say this is a severe hit to just basic human rights in our country. And additionally, for me, the concerns, the hints of removing other protections are alarming. And so I will just leave that there and continue to just share with you that for those that are joining and have not had the opportunity to interact and know about what the Office of Human Rights and Equity does, our office is an entity in Howard County government that seeks to eradicate discrimination, increase equal opportunity, address inequities, increase equal opportunity, and protect and promote human rights in the county. The office serves as change agents in promoting and fostering respectful, welcoming, inclusive, and equitable attitudes, beliefs, and actions, not only in county government, but among our Howard County residents. Today's discussion is centered around LGBTQIA plus protections, policies, respect, and just overall humanity. I wanted to share just quickly some statistics with you, and I know how much everyone loves that. And with our two doctors that's on the panel, they will appreciate the data. But I think all of us can take the data and it gives us a snapshot. So according to Catalyst Inc. research, as of May 31st, 2022, in the United States, almost half, 45.5% of LGBT workers have experienced at some point in their careers some form of unfair treatment at work, including harassment, being fired, or facing hiring discrimination based on their LGBT status. When applying for jobs, nearly 1/4 of LGBT Americans have experienced discrimination based upon sexual orientation or gender identity, but experiences vary by race and ethnicity, with those who are people of color, 29% say that they've experienced discrimination, and those who identify as white, 18.3%. LGBTQIA employees in the U.S. earn 90% for every $1 the typical worker earns. Transgender employees have 32% less per year than their cisgender counterparts. LGBT people are often subjected to harmful language. 67.5% have heard slurs, jokes, or negative comments about LGBTQ people in the workplace. Transgender workers are subject to different types of harassment than LGBT workers. This includes bathroom accessibility, being deliberately referred to by incorrect pronouns, and having to tolerate inappropriate questions. Transgender people are often denied identity papers that reflect their preferred gender, without which they cannot work, travel, open a bank account, or access services. So I just wanted to give that brief overview. I am fortunate to be able to introduce our first speaker, who is Dr. Jules Gilliam, who I've had the pleasure to work with the past couple of years. Dr. Jules, I'll just go with Dr. Jules, is transgender and non-binary. Z has 25 years of overall IT experience and 20 years in academic computing and instructional and systems environments, focusing on creating, developing, and orchestrating solutions, support, and training for the end user in various capacities. As a community advocate, Dr. Jules has served on the Howard County LGBTQ work group and was a speaker at the 2018 TEDx University of Maryland Baltimore talk entitled Finding the Middle Path in Gender. Dr. Jules is committed to advocating on behalf of all LGBTQIA plus persons, but particularly transgender and non-binary persons. So Dr. Jules, thank you for agreeing to participate today. I am going to turn the virtual microphone over to you.
Thank you. That was wonderful. Let me share my screen. Does everybody see my presentation?
We can.
Excellent. So I'm Dr. Jules Gilliam, and if you want to get to my presentation, you can get to it by typing in tinyurl.com/H pronouns. And again, I'm going to be talking about pronouns and policies and combating LGBTQIA++ discrimination in employment. So I'm going to give people a minute or two to write that down. So hopefully if they want to have the presentation, at least they have it either in front of them or they can go back to it and reference it at a later time.
And Jules, just so you know, Claudia also put it in the chat box, so everyone that's participating can also go to the chat box and copy it in the chat box as well.
Awesome. Okay, so we'll go moving right along. So one of the things I've done a lot of presentations, and one of the things that always drives me crazy is that people don't tell you what they're going to actually talk about, and then they don't really talk about what they said they were going to talk about. So what I hear up here is the learning agenda. I'm going to talk about being transgender and being non-binary. I'm going to talk about briefly what the discrimination laws in Howard County are, but also talk about what can we do in terms of work discrimination. I'm going to talk about the pronouns briefly, and then I'm going to talk about culture in the workplace, and then most importantly, how to be an ally. And so those are the things that I'm going to focus on. Now, Yolanda just read this, but I just want to throw out there that I'm not an expert in HR. I'm not an expert in policy. My training is in information interaction design, is my doctorate. My master's is in computer systems management, and I have 2 bachelors, one in social work and one in computer information science. So that's what the 4 pieces of paper on the back of me are. That's what I have. I'm a non-binary and transgender person. I'm an older non-binary person, so I'm 55 years old. So a lot of the people that I associate with are older people, and they don't necessarily understand my journey. So today I'm going to give you a little snapshot on my journey as we talk through the pronouns and policies, but I'm going to give you a little bit of examples of my background of who I am and what I have experienced, so that hopefully you can take my experiences and change them so that other people have better experiences. That's my hope. So what is transgender and what is non-binary? There's so much confusion about transgender, and there's so many terms out there, and I am going to simplify it and make it easy for people to be able to understand what transgender is and what non-binary is. So transgender is only basically, in my perspective, it's only the view of how you see yourself in society that differs from what you were biologically born at. It's as simple as that. That's just simple, your gender expression that's different than what you were actually born with. You're transgender. That doesn't mean you have to get surgery. That doesn't mean you have to change any of your body parts. It just simply means that your expression is different than what you were assigned at birth. Now, hopefully everyone understands that. And I am hoping that people understand what that means, because transgender seems to have a lot of, different terminology. So sex, biological sex is what you were born with. Transgender is the actual, your view or your expression in society of how you view yourself in gender. Hopefully that's clear and that makes sense. Being non-binary. Now, I'm an older non-binary person. The younger non-binary people, they just cheer me up inside. They're very empowered, and that's great. I'm so glad that they can be that way, because they've had it in their schools. They've had, the situation in their workplaces where they're being asked their pronoun. It wasn't like that for me. It hasn't been like that for me. I just recently became transgender or non-binary 5 years ago, which isn't a whole lot of time. I'm only really 5 years old when it comes to that perspective of life. I got the experience of listening to Katie Couric and National Geographic talk about gender, and that is when I realized that I was non-binary. And non-binary merely means that your view of the world isn't the same as what you are born with. So, just somebody there. So what that means is that I'm not solely male or not solely female. So like my outside looks male. I have a tie on. I look more masculine. I wear a masculine shirt. I wear masculine pants. I wear masculine shoes. But on the inside, I'm female. Not everybody is made up like that. Some people see themselves, either neither or both, or not at all, or fluid. They want to be feminine one day and then masculine another. So non-binary just simply means that you are solely not male, you're solely not female. And hopefully that explains what non-binary means, because it can be really confusing to people. The other difficult thing about being non-binary is that you don't pass. And I'll go into that in a second. But the other thing that's really, 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 really important, and this is, the article is down there below from 2022, 82% of the transgender individuals have experienced suicidal thoughts, and 40% of the transgender individuals have attempted suicide. That is extremely, extremely high. So that is something that if people ask, why do we have to worry about these pronouns? Why do we have to have inclusive language? The reason why is because people feel like they don't fit. People feel like they're not seen. People feel like they're not viewed. So it's extremely important, I can't emphasize it enough, that we take it very seriously to try to include transgender and non-binary people. Now, transgender and non-binary people sometimes aren't seen as passing, and that's a problem. It's a definite problem for me. When I go to a restaurant and the waiter or waitress will or person will serve me, and they won't know whether I am a man or a woman, and people won't know who I am. They don't know how to address me or how to deal with me. So that's just one of the problems that I have dealt with. And so, and it's very difficult, you know, when you start a workplace and you go into a work, you know, for 9 months, I don't tell anybody that I'm non-binary or transgender, because I want them to know my work first before they get to know if I'm transgender or I'm non-binary, because I want to make sure that it's safe. I want to make sure that it's comfortable. I one time at a job was open, and it wasn't helpful. It wasn't helpful that I did it right out of the box, because they didn't get to know who I was first, and they put me in a bucket that I shouldn't have been in. So so that is one of the difficulty of not passing. And not passing means that people can't tell who you are. And that's a difficult thing. The other thing that we have are the bathrooms. Just to tell you a bathroom story. So I used to work at the University of Maryland School of Social Work, and they put a gender neutral bathroom in the building. And they put it in a part where it was a kind of conservative group of people, and they had to walk all the way around the other side of the building. So there was a meeting with the dean, and the person was very angry and very upset about it. And then I went to them and asked them, you know, if they were okay, and they said they were mad, and asked how she came across in the meeting, and I said she didn't come across as love or from a place of compassion. Within 1 hour later, the police showed up at my door and said I was threatening. I wasn't threatening. I was just merely pointing out to her that she didn't come from a place of love and compassion during the meeting, and she was angry about the bathrooms. And it was not a good moment for me when the police showed up, because they thought I was threatening. And if you know who I am, you know I'm not threatening. So the bathrooms, the other thing is, like when I was in Northern Virginia community, when we were in Nova Online, the bathrooms were not gender neutral. So I would go in there and people would look at the name tag of the woman, look at me, look at the name tag, and be confused as to what bathroom they should be in. So I've now immediately come out with a thing that says, yes, we're both in the right place. I say it very quickly because they think that I'm a man and they think I'm threatening. And that is really hard and difficult to deal with people thinking you're threatening when you're really not. You're just trying to be who you are. So the good news is that Northern Virginia Community College is now having a gender neutral bathroom in their place of work. I'm very thrilled that that's happening. But when you make policies about bathrooms, make sure you educate the people around you about the gender neutral bathrooms. Make sure you educate people about those policies and what it means to them. And if they have to go all the way around, you know, the way because they don't want to use the all gender bathroom, explain to them they can use the all gender bathroom if they want to. But bathrooms is a big deal in Howard County. The CA doesn't have necessarily have gender bathrooms, and they're looking into changing that. But if you think about it, you think about your experience. Have you ever thought going to a bathroom was stressful? Well, I can tell you that every time I go into a bathroom that's not mine in my condo, it is extremely stressful because I have to deal with it. Now you're saying, well, dude, why don't you just go into the men's bathroom? Well, I go into the men's bathroom, but the men's bathroom is scary for me because I have to go. I don't want to deal with the men at the urinals. So I do have some gay guy friends that always take me to the bathroom, and they're great. And the rule in the bathroom is that if you're a man, you don't talk at all in the bathroom. So that's something that was new for me. So I learned that rule really quickly. But either place is really uncomfortable for me. So having all gender bathroom is a much better place for me. And hopefully your places of work have all gender bathrooms, because if you don't, it can be a very stressful place, stressful time to go. Now, discrimination laws in Howard County. It basically says they can't discriminate against you because of your gender identity. or your appearance. And that's all great and dandy, and I think it's really awesome, and I love being in Howard County. But just because something says that doesn't necessarily mean that it is. Just like we say that, you're protected with race, and yet we still deal with race discrimination, and things like that. So it's good that you're protected. It's really awesome. But figuring out how to navigate that's a challenge. And that's hopefully other people on my panel will be able to talk to that and explain that more as to what it is that you can do. I do have a couple of hints on what we can do about work discrimination when you're treated differently or less favorable for some reason. There's some things that you can do in the workplace. How do you prevent workplace discrimination? You stay on top of evolving legislation. Thank goodness the U.S. Supreme Court ruled on June 15th, 2020, and I can't tell you how much that meant to me that day. That passed that sexual orientation and gender identity expression is included in the definition of sex. That was such a relief. And now that everything is going on, with Yolanda was saying with Roe versus Wade, who knows what's going to happen now? So it's going to be a very stressful time. Judge Clarence Thomas has said that he's already going to go after marriage equality. And so who knows what else they're going to go after. A lot of laws in our country are being affected with transgender people, and it's becoming extremely disturbing. So it's something that we definitely have to stay on top of and understand what is our legislation and what changes are happening and what's occurring there. Also, review your policies. Stay on top of them. Make sure that they are compliant and they are current. Ensure that you have written records of prior discipline when terminating an employee, which, again, I'm not an HR person, but that's kind of a given if you ask me. Implement policies and procedures that minimize the unconscious bias. We all have biases. We all do. When you see me, I look like I have white privilege. As soon as I open my mouth, I lose my white privilege because people don't know whether I'm a man or a woman, and they don't know what box to put me in. So I think it's really important that we look at our biases, and we look at what it is that how we see things, and we all have them. We just have to admit that we have them and work hard at trying to demystify those. Also, invest in training and supporting resources. So now the LGBTIQ terminology, I can tell you right now, being a transgender non-binary person, it is out of control, okay? There's so many terms, so many things that you need to know, but let me tell you what you need to know. You just need to know the person's name. Now I'm going to go over the pronouns, but if you know the person's name and you call them by what they want to be called, that's the most important thing. Now I'm an older transgender non-binary person, so I'm a lot more tolerant because I know people make mistakes. But I can tell you, as the young people are starting to get older, they're not going to be as tolerant. So it's important that we get on board with that we really understand the general neutral language, and not saying ladies and gentlemen, but really trying to say people, and trying to look at our language and try to be inclusive with our language and our conduct. And, do we have a preferred name policy? That's something that I thought was really interesting when I was researching this was, not everybody's legal name, like my legal name is Julie, but I prefer Jules. And so Jules works for me because to me, Jules is more in the middle, but that's my preferred name. But my legal name is Julie. But I would prefer to go by my preferred name, not my legal name. So having resources like that, again, understanding what your biases are, because we all have them, reporting discrimination, and then being an ally. And I will go into being an ally in a second. And hopefully I'm not too all over the place. I'm trying to stay semi-focused. Pronouns. Honestly, if you were to ask me about my pronouns, I would say I'm marshmallow. I really didn't want a pronoun. I really thought that was stupid to have pronouns. I presented in front of 200 people, and my colleague saw me with a tie and said, oh my goodness, said he in the middle of my presentation with all my colleagues looking at me, seeing if I was going to respond. Well, I was talking about technology. It wasn't a time for me to talk about my pronouns, so I just let it go. Come to find out, that coworker spent a week agonizing over my pronouns because I didn't have any, and she didn't know what to call me. And so that was really difficult for her. So I decided to pick a pronoun, and I picked Z and Zer. And if there are pronouns, she and her and he and him and they and them. I don't go by they and them because I'm an identical twin. I was born a they. So I can't go by that. So Z is not as popular. Most people understand what they is. If you think about he or she or they, people are not going to think of Z. But that is the one I had to pick because my they is my twin and I. And so that's how that goes in terms of my pronouns. But honestly, I think pronouns is another bucket that we put people in. We don't need race, and we really don't need pronouns. But for now, we have to abide by them because that's how we identify people. But honestly, just by identifying them, if you get confused, you get stressed out, you don't know what to call them, please just call them by their name. Now, why do we focus on the pronouns in the first place? Now, I actually looked up, there were 76 pronouns, and there's all these terms and all this confusion. Don't even worry about that. Take it, put it to the side, and think about the only reason why you need to know the pronoun is because you're respecting that person's identity and you're creating a welcome space. And so that's something that when Yolanda introduced her pronouns, that made me warm and fuzzy inside. That made me realize she's a safe person that I can go to. She's somebody who's not going to discriminate against me. She's not going to be somebody who's not welcoming to who I am. And so that's what that means. That's why it's so important, is it tells me that person doesn't think I'm going to go to hell. That person doesn't think that I'm a terrible person. That person thinks that I'm okay as a human being and wants to recognize me as who I am. So by providing your opportunity to share your pronouns, let's say you don't know somebody. You don't know what somebody looks like. The best thing you can do is say, and if you go by she, hey, I go by she and her. These are my pronouns. What are your pronouns? Now, I don't go by she or her. I'm just giving it as an example. But if you are a person who's cisgender, who goes by the normal pronouns, you think it's probably stupid. Like, why do I have to go through these pronouns when if everybody else has these pronouns? Honestly, for the transgender person, for the non-binary person, to hear you say your pronouns just makes you feel like you know that you are safe and that someone's not judging you based on your appearance. I mean, they're making a welcoming environment for you. And so that is extremely helpful. Now, what if I don't want to share my pronouns? Well, I don't share my pronouns the first 9 months that I go to working at a place because I don't know if it's safe. So I just suck it up and I deal with she and her. But when I feel more comfortable and people see my work, then I share it. But there will be times when people are not comfortable with sharing their pronouns because they fear bullying, they feel harassment, they're not sure if it's safe. So I would say be okay with understanding that maybe they don't feel like it's safe to share their pronouns, and be okay with it and just call them by their name. Anybody who's over 40, or older, I think maybe 40 you're comfortable with it, but 50 definitely, and higher, it's not something that you grew up with. This is still fairly new. So if you're stressing over it, don't stress over it. Just Just be okay with it. Now, making mistakes. This happens all the time. People will never get my Z right. They just won't. It's not common nor knowledge. And, you know, I have a friend that I'm dating, and she's like, I'm going to get it right. And I'm like, you're not. You're not going to get it right because it's difficult. And she'll make a mistake and it'll be okay. But when I've dealt with other people who make mistakes, they make the mistake of not only making the mistake, but they're making it worse. So what will happen is they'll say she instead of Z, and then they'll go, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I can't believe I did that. I didn't mean to do that. I can't believe I called you by that. I'm so stupid. Well, what you just did is you just made it all about you. And the person who has to deal with the pronoun is now comforting you because you have now gone and self-deprecated. So just if you make a mistake, just be accountable for it. Hey, I'm sorry, I messed up. I'm working on it. And let it go. Don't keep going on and on and on about it. Just let it go. Now, it used to be that people would say, hey, Jules, what's your preferred gender pronoun? But it's not preferred really anymore. They're not using preferred pronouns anymore, preferred gender pronouns. It's just pronouns that can be used. And that's just an easier way to be able to hear that, is that pronouns can just be used. Culture in the workplace. So when you're talking about interviews, really important to ask people what their pronouns are. You're right off the bat, you're creating a culture where it is welcoming by asking the interviewers or the people who are potentially could be working for you what their pronouns are. And then onboarding, making sure their pronouns. And then opportunities. You know, is there a place or a policy or a process that you can go ahead and you can list a grievance? You know, make sure you know the transgender people, especially, or non-binary people, know what policies are in place that they can use to actually say this isn't fair, this isn't right, and what can they do to go ahead and state that so that we can fix those opportunities. So I went to a conference and I was stressing over it because I didn't know about the bathrooms, and it was in Virginia, which is very conservative, and didn't know what to do. And the lady was amazing. She put me in there weren't a lot of spaces. She made a space for me, and she let me stay at the conference hotel where I could use that bathroom and not worry about those bathrooms. But that is an issue if you're an employer that you have to worry about, is that when your employees are traveling, it could be that the bathroom could be an issue. So think about that. That's something to really think about. Preferred name policy. So that is something that I had stated before, but I'm hurrying because I know I have time. Preferred name policy, it's just going ahead and making sure that the name, you know, that you have your name and that it is there, and that if my name is Jules, that name is being used. And lastly, make your support visible. Be an ally. Use the pronouns in practice. Look at your forms. Do they have non-binary on there? Use gender neutral language. Keep your energy open. I can identify when a person comes to me and I know that they are not happy with who I am. I can feel it. They don't even have to tell me. They don't even have to tell me who they are, open up or say a word to me. But if you see someone who's in the middle, try to continue to still be open with your energy, because that's really important. Put your pronouns on Zoom, WebEx. Unfortunately, Meetings doesn't have the pronouns. Since June 22nd, 2022, there have been requests to have it changed, and they still haven't done that. And name tags. And in Zoom, this is the setting. You have the slide, so you can go to it. This is the one for WebEx. That's how you want to do it for WebEx. And hopefully it didn't talk your ear off. And that's hopefully you got one thing that you walked away with that you didn't know, because that's my goal, is one thing. And if you have any questions, send me a message. It's right here. If you have any questions, just let me know. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jules. I appreciate it. And I appreciate every time we're in a meeting together, you bring your authentic self. And that's all you can ask of anyone and everyone that's on this panel, is to bring to bring yourself to the panel. And so I definitely picked up some knowledge and some things for us to go back and look at as well. But I know I wanted to bring Claudia back in because Claudia was going to co-moderate the panel with us. And I know we want to bring in, with the time we have left, with our other panelists. So Claudia.
Okay, thank you so much, Jules, for your presentation. I really appreciated it. I was writing all kinds of notes. I really particularly valued the point that you were saying about using neutral gender language. Like, it's so easy to say, like particularly where I work, it's like, oh, we need to man this table. Or, we need to get all the guys, good afternoon, everybody, how's everyone doing? All these guys, right? Just trying to be mindful of, using more people inclusive language. So I really appreciated that. As we move on to our panel, which is going to include Dr. Jules, I'm very excited to introduce Dr. Denise Boston. She is the Equity and Restorative Practices Manager for the Howard County Office of Human Rights and Equity. And so we're so grateful to have you with us, Dr. Boston. And I'm also very grateful and excited to also introduce April Delazana. April, as I'm adding her to the spotlight here. There we go. April is a project engineer with ProSync, which is a contractor with the Department of Defense. And so I'm really grateful to have you here with us as well, April. And myself and Yolanda are just really excited to really kind of delve more into this conversation, to learn more from you, and to learn how we can just be better allies in the workplace. So Yolanda, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Claudia. And so we just had a set of questions that, in thinking about the presentation, that we wanted to bring up. And I know that Jules touched on this, but I would like for all the panelists who want to join in to say, using someone's pronouns, why is that so important for that to be used, for there to be a policy and for people to respect those pronouns in the workplace. And I'm saying workplace just because we specifically talk, but I would say in general in life. So I will open that up for anyone that wants to jump in.
So my perspective on the use of proper pronouns for just about anyone is, it's really just sort of a matter of respect. It shows that you're willing to respect that individual for who they are. And I mean, this even goes for cisgender individuals as well. Referring to them by a pronoun that does not match their gender identity is already considered to be, at the very least, strange, if not rude. And this the same scenario applies to transgender people, perhaps a little bit more so, because with transgender and non-binary individuals, finding their own pronouns can be a process, and it can be a touchy subject with these individuals to bring up perhaps the pronouns that they no longer identify with, simply because it took them time to get to where they are and with an understanding of their identity.
Thank you, April. I'm Dr. Denise Boston. I go by she and her. And I really believe that, in order for us to create a sense of community, it's really important to just understand that we all come into conversations, into settings, into every place that we find ourselves in. We want to bring our full self, and we want to make everyone around us feel like a sense of welcoming. and a sense of belonging. So I really believe, like what everybody's been saying, that is truly it's an understanding of respectfulness. So thank you.
And I will just also add to that, being very intentional. Jules talked about that during the presentation, and just to kind of add on to what April and Denise was saying, being very intentional. When I started and I talked about Roe v. Wade, I was very intentional in not saying women's rights, because everyone that can have children do not identify as a woman. And so I was very intentional, but as part of our learning experience and a continuous learning experience. And so what the next question I would want, each of you to address is, what would you like employers, your coworkers to know about the LGBTQI plus experience, being in the workplace, entering into the workplace? It made me sad, Jules, hearing that for 9 months you don't share.
Yeah.
Like, that just should not be what you should have to endure for 9 months on a new job. You should be able to walk in the door. This is who I am. This is my experience. Welcome me. But can you all share, what you would want people to know, and, about either policies or your respective experiences?
Well, I think that people should really understand that to be lifelong learners means that you don't know everything.
Okay.
I mean, that is first and foremost, that you see yourself being in the presence of people that can help you and teach you. Jules, I appreciate you so much. I want to get to know you more and find out, just how you're just so beautiful in the ways in which you're generous about how do we navigate our ways in this. And I think it is generational as well. And so I would also say, be around younger people, because they are the trailblazers right out here right now that's telling their truth. And they're going to let you know how they identify themselves. And so I think that's a great lesson. So it's not just reading and training, it's putting yourself in situations where you're around many types of people.
April, did you want to join in?
Sure, absolutely. So with regards to just sort of things to keep in mind with regards to LGBTQIA plus individuals in your workplace or your community, is really fundamentally the way you address these individuals is not different in many ways from cisgender or heterosexual individuals. People are not somehow more or less special for having these identities or sexualities. They're not. They don't need to be approached in any particularly harmful or beneficial light. We are people. We are all just simply people, and I highly encourage, outside of simply making sure that you are respecting pronouns and respecting the names that people give you, that other than that, you simply treat your coworkers as coworkers.
And Jules, I know you talked about during your presentation. Did you want to add anything? Like, if you were to walk in day one, what would you want your coworkers and employers to know?
I want them to know that that they're accepting. One of the things that happened for me where I work now, it's the content management system we use is Canvas, and I had one of my coworkers do some research and come back to me and say, Jules, we can put your pronouns on Canvas. Isn't that awesome? Mm-hmm. And he made it his point to go in there and do that for me. And that was amazing. And like when I went to the conference, my boss was like, what can we do to like try to make you feel more comfortable? So like things like, I don't need to be special. I don't need to be like what April was saying. I don't need to be like, I don't want to be like put in there with a spotlight on me, but I do want people to see who I am. And I've noticed even now, like, you know, if people put their pronouns on Zoom, you know, people putting their pronouns on, the ability to do that just shows me that they're a safe person. You know, like Dr. Boston was talking about, you know, what her pronouns were. That makes me warm and fuzzy inside, because I'm like, I know that it is a safe person. And you don't know who safe people are. I walk around all the time not knowing whether I'm safe or not. So like, so knowing that there are safe people out there makes me feel so much better.
Thank you for that. And Claudia, I know you had a few questions. I'm gonna let you jump in.
Absolutely. So even to that, right, I'm thinking about myself being a safe coworker, right? My pronouns are she, her. And so what are some other practical ways that people can communicate to transgender and non-binary persons that they're safe? How can they support, protect them in the workplace? Because let's say you do work somewhere where your coworkers are safe and protective, but maybe the policies aren't there, or maybe the leadership isn't there. And so we're needing to kind of lead from the bottom up. You know, what are some practical ways that we can do that as well?
So like being in the bathroom is a really stressful thing for me. So like one of my coworkers used to be like, Jules, I'll go with you to the bathroom. Like, you know, I know it sounds really crazy and it sounds really grade school, but honestly, it really helped me to know that I had another person there, that if somebody was going to like freak out or whatever, that they were there for me. They were right there. So that's one way. Email signature, that's another way to put your signature or your pronouns on your signature. That's another way. But you know, it's also a growth. It's a growth thing. It happens over time. When you start developing relationships with people, that's what happened to me. Like my team is now much more sensitive to it. At first, they were like, oh, this is kind of a pain. And, you know, and I even brought it up to my church and they were like, no, we don't want to do that. You know, they didn't understand. So it is a process. It does take time.
April, what about you?
So when it comes to improving sort of your workplace environment, especially in the face of perhaps some very vocal opposition. I know that some individuals are in environments where there are people who may not be very respectful towards them in a workplace, or perhaps as you mentioned, the rules of a workplace could be stacked against them effectively. I think what's important to note is that these situations are very difficult to address for the people involved, for transgender, non-binary people involved, because finding a voice in these environments can be very difficult when the environment is already very negative. So I believe the most important thing that you can do to help improve these situations is simply talk with these people, find out what their perspective on the situation is, and then maybe address this with the more problematic elements of the environment, either alongside or perhaps instead of the individuals who are affected.
So I hate this, but we have to come to a close, and I want to kind of come to Dr. Boston first, because I know she needs to transition. But what are some final thoughts? Is there anything that you would like to share that we potentially didn't get the chance to cover or touch on yet?
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to be part of this wonderful panel. I'd say that if you're in leadership position and you are creating documents and mission statements, be intentional around being respectful. Say the word respectful and inclusive intentionally, and express why, because the quality of people's lives are so important. And so I would say that we have an opportunity as we're writing about how we treat people who are coming into the workplace, how we're onboarding, like Jules was saying, that when people come in, they see those words, and then we have to do the work behind it to make sure that people are following what we're saying. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
April, how about you?
As far as closing remarks go, I think the most important thing to keep in mind really just boils down to, pardon me, my
I know
head
it's
just
so
sort of
much,
blanked.
right?
Yeah.
It's so much to say that the pressure of Claudia making you say just a quick tidbit.
No, this is quite all right. The most important thing to keep in mind really is making an effort towards things. You're never really going to be expected to be perfect in all of your social interactions with anyone, let alone transgender people or non-binary people. What's really important to keep in mind is that it really is the thought that counts. It's the effort that you put towards these interactions, and as long as you continue trying to ensure that you're creating a supportive environment and communicating with these people to find out what more you could be doing, you are putting in as much effort as you need to.
Jules?
I've pretty much said everything that I need to say.
Absolutely. Yolanda?
Well, I'll just add, and Jules, I think that you have probably way more to say, but I know with time constraints, I will say a few things. That the Office of Human Rights and Equity is a place that if someone feels that they have been discriminated against in the workplace, that they can come to our office and file a complaint. We have an investigative unit that will investigate complaints of discrimination. Protected classes of relevance at this point is sex, gender identity or expression, sexual orientation, personal appearance. So someone may think that, someone should dress a certain way, based upon how they identify or don't identify, and may, subject someone to discrimination. You can come to our office and file a complaint, and our office will actually investigate those complaints. If it is someone within county government, there is a grievance process that the employee can go through. And then once, that grievance process has finished through the Human Resources Office and they want to continue, they can then file with our office. Additionally, I'll just add in closing remarks is that we mentioned that Jules had participated in the LGBTQ work group. Well, the county executive Ball recently pre-filed legislation for the LGBTQIA plus commission, which would mean that commission would be a permanent body here within county government, which will bring together people that are concerned and involve members of the community to make sure that the protections are in place, that the voice of the LGBTQIA plus community is being heard, and that there are best practices not only occurring within county government but within the community. Jules had talked about bathrooms and how that is a huge thing, and for someone that is cisgender you may not understand that, but this commission can continue to give that voice that is needed to continue to make sure that we are ever evolving and that we're changing and making sure that not only a select part of our community is being protected, but all of our community has the protections and they feel welcome, and they feel included in our community. So I think I probably went over, and Claudia's probably about to mute my microphone. So Claudia, I'll let you close it out.
No, I really have valued this. When myself and the outreach team were thinking about what we wanted to do for Pride Month, we really felt it was important for us to have a conversation that was specifically around transgender and non-binary persons, because I feel as though the discrimination that you guys experience on a day-to-day is different. And it is a conversation that we tend to either shy away from or avoid or try to pretend like it isn't there. And we really want to be intentional about learning about these communities and these persons in particular, so that we can not just be allies, but that we can create a new culture and create new language that is representative of the equity and inclusion that we really do want to see. And so we're going to continue this conversation tonight at 6:30 at the HCLS East Columbia branch. And we're going to be reading Tomorrow Will Be Different by Sarah McBride. For those of you who do not know, Sarah McBride is our first openly transgender senator. And so we're going to be talking through her experience, her love or her relationships, losing her husband, but then also a lot of her activist work on behalf of transgender equality. And so if you want to continue that conversation with us, we want you to come tonight, HCLS East Columbia branch right here in Columbia at 6:30 p.m. We'll continue that conversation. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we will see you again at another time.